If you aren't experimenting with Flash, you are missing out. One of the best parts of photography is learning or buying something new so that you can create a whole new look. Sometimes that's a funky lens, or sometimes it's a creative technique like using slow shutter speeds. But neither of those come close to how powerful using a flash can be, not to mention how much fun. Unfortunately, they also don't come close to how confusing using a flash can be. Don't worry, because I'll teach you, and by the end of the video, you'll understand and you'll be fired up to go and make something. Plus, later on, I'll give you a super easy way you can use flash in a dark room that makes it look like daytime. I think flash gets a bad rap. A lot of the time when you think about flash photography, you think about those sorts of like overly filled in, glammy, magazine-y shots, and at least for me, that's not particularly inspiring. It's a bit too Ken Rockwell, boomer aesthetic, guy who only takes photos of young women coded. No shade to Kenny Boy and his growing family though. You can support me and my growing ego by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It's just that those sorts of photos are only just barely scratching the surface of what a flash can do. Maybe you aren't into that aesthetic, but you are into kind of a more dramatic portrait look, or maybe you're into a really high-key surreal kind of look, or maybe you want to go completely crazy Annie Leibovitz style and create a whole world where all of the lighting is completely under your control. For this video, I'm going to be using this little Godox IT30 Pro, as well as this is the AD200 Pro 2. I really like the AD200 because it's usually got more than enough power for anything that I'm shooting, but it can also really easily go into a backpack. I'm not sponsored by Godox or anything like that. I just like these. Both of these are linked in the video description with all the other gear that I use. Right below, a link to download one of my photo zines for free if you're interested. But also, you really don't need a fancy camera flash like 99% of the time. I used to freak out about how much it would cost to do professional looking flash work when I saw everyone in tutorials using like pro photo gear, which is just like completely unnecessary for almost everybody. And most of it's rental anyway. Unless you're doing like 8 hours of rapid fire model posing, or there's somebody from corporate on set with a Pantone swatch, you really don't need the colors to be 100% exactly perfect. And I've had great success with even really cheap units from like Neewer and stuff. Just don't expect them to last forever. So how on earth do we actually use these things then? Funny you should ask. The first step is actually to not switch it on yet. Basically, because flash is really, really fast, hence the name flash, your camera's shutter speed won't change how bright the flash is, because the flash is so much faster than your shutter. So this means that basically the only thing that the shutter speed is controlling is the ambient exposure, the light that's already there without the flash. So deciding how bright you want the background to be is the first step. Maybe you want to be a drama queen and do no background at all by using a really fast shutter. Or you want plenty of level in the background so that the flash is just a little bonus light, so you can use a slower shutter. Plus, on that note, you can get away with way slower shutter speeds than you'd think when you're using flash, so it's worth doing some experimenting. Once you've figured out your shutter speed, then you can use the aperture to control the brightness of the flash, but I don't think you should. Instead, decide what aperture you would like to use based on the way that your lens looks and how much stuff you want in focus, and then set the exposure of the flash by just turning the flash power up or down. But the caveat is you do need to keep your flash's limitations in mind. If you're using a Wii flash like this one, then yes, you might need to compromise and open up the lens a little bit more or crank your ISO. With the AD200, I can crank this thing up and shoot at f16 all day long if I want to, but I might end up blinding the talent. Something to think about. There's a really big mistake a lot of people make right here, but first, another thing you should think about is building yourself a portfolio website with today's video sponsor, Framer. Framer is the best tool for creating and publishing websites. Somehow, they've managed to make it both really easy to use and really powerful. I used Framer to build zonefocused.com, which is a sort of portfolio project gallery hybrid. When your goal is to show off photos or art in general, it makes sense to have a website design that suits the images. I went for a minimal look since my photos tend to be kind of maximal. If you're not into the whole picking out colors and fonts like I am, that's also completely fine, because Framer has a massive library of built-in templates to choose from, as well as lots of pre-built little bits that you can add on, things like headers and footers and stuff like that. And it loads fast. It works seamlessly on mobile, and it's really easy to update it with new photos whenever you want. Another thing that makes Framer really great for photographers specifically is the way that it's designed. It feels like a tool that was made by creative people as well, and so there's so many different ways that you can use it. Maybe you want to make pitch decks for clients, or a blog, or like I do, use it as a canvas to brainstorm shot ideas. Even if you're not trying to be a professional, whatever that means, having a website for your photography is so important. So today, don't put it off, don't put it on your to-do list. Today, build yourself a website with Framer. Sign up for free using the link in the video description, and while you're at it, use the code HunterCreates1 for an upgrade on the house. Thank you very much to Framer and to you for supporting what I do. Okay, here's a truth nuke. Are you ready to be settings pilled and TTL maxing? Then you gotta switch off the auto ISO when you're using Flash. In TTL metering, your Flash's power is what's being automated. So if you're automating the Flash power and you're automating the ISO, then who's flying this thing? It's usually best to avoid having more than one setting set to an auto thing at a time, otherwise it can get a bit confusing for everybody involved. But Hunter, you're saying, how on earth do I know how bright to make the Flash in the first place? Good question. This is the bit where you get to be creative and do some art. I know, sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. This bit does require thinking with your heart and not your head. Again, there are no wrong answers here. You can go anywhere from you used a Flash for that to like 2000 watts of direct bare bulb Flash where the talent is the brightest object in the known universe, or like Bjork in that one music video. If you're using TTL metering, you can set how bright the Flash is by just changing the Flash compensation, or if you're on manual mode, you can just turn the Flash up. Usually, if I'm in a situation where I'm not really sure what looks best, I try to get the exposure so that people's faces are nice and bright, but without clipping anything. However, there's no incorrect answers here, and you can go really crazy if you want. I've recently been loving these sort of inverted silhouette type shots where the Flash is set to 1 billion and the camera is exposed for ambient. I just think they're really interesting. You can also just barely spice things up with a Flash, adding what looks like a tiny bit of direct sunlight. Food for thought. But Hunter, now you're asking, how do I actually achieve those sorts of results? I don't, like, where does the Flash go? What do I attach to it? Do I need to attach anything to it? Where do I point the damn thing? Again, good questions. First of all, there is a difference between using a bigger studio style bare bulb Flash and a more typical speedlight style Fresnel Flash. The bulb obviously emits light from everywhere, which means it's often better at evenly filling up things like umbrellas and softboxes, which we'll talk about later. But it also means that when you're using the bare bulb, there's way more light spilling all over the place and bouncing everywhere. So your shadows won't be as punchy and there's spill all over the place. If you're going for a Skater Boy contrasty, we definitely used a Flash here kind of look, that might not be ideal and you might be better off using the Fresnel. It also gives you more output than the bare bulb too. But the bulb, in my opinion, does look a little bit more like real sunlight, especially when you use it outdoors in sunlight, and that's one of my favorite ways to use it. I know these demo shots are not my best work ever. It's just been one of those weeks. Here, I had the AD200 attached to a tripod leg, don't ask, and I basically just experimented by moving the Flash about until I got the look I wanted. I think with big outside Flash sort of stuff, I'm always aiming to get, one, the right amount of level to make it look a little bit surreal, and two, just enough angle to create a bit of shape without losing the surreal thing. If you want to go a bit more traditional, stick the Flash on a 45-degree angle opposite side of the camera, pointing down like this. Quite a simple look, but a really fun way to spend a Wednesday evening. But of course, you can put things between the Flash and the subject, like diffusion. Softboxes are great for this to, soften the light, right? Here's with a bare bulb and here's with a softbox. I just have these 3-foot ones from Xi'an because they came with my video lights. They're fine. Aperture ones are fine. You can also use a grid if you want to sort of contain the light and stop it from spilling completely everywhere. Here's without a grid and here's with the grid. It's a big difference. As well as diffusion, you could also use a reflector, like one of these, for more power but slightly less sharp in the shadows. They're very useful, and you'd be surprised at how much more power they give you. I haven't got one for the AD200 yet, unfortunately. Also important, and a lot of the time overlooked for some reason, gels. Flash is usually a pretty cool temperature white. The AD200 does about 5800 Kelvin. So if you're shooting indoors at a party and all the lights are super warm 3200 Kelvin tungsten, but your flash is really cool, it's gonna look a bit weird. Personally, I like to use a tungsten gel in those sorts of situations so that the lighting kind of all looks like it's part of the same world. But if you want it to look weird, that's also fine. Speaking of indoor parties, remember how earlier I mentioned a hack for shooting inside of rooms that are really dark? Yeah, bash your flash into the ceiling on full power. If you have something with decent horsepower, like the AD200, you're basically going to use the entire top half of the room as a giant bounce card. And if you play around with the angle a little bit and there aren't too many oddly colored lamps in the frame, it just kind of looks like it's daytime. Now, here's the part of the video where I remind you who you are. An artist, right? The most important part of using a flash is not the guide number, it's not the inverse square law or the wireless system, it's being creative with it. You do not, and I cannot stress this enough, need to listen to anyone who tells you that you're not doing something the correct or professional way. If you do art, but you're trying to do everything the most correct, optimal way, you're probably not doing it for the right reasons, and it's probably not going to end up being good art. You can use flash to make a photo brighter, sure. You could even use flash to make a photo prettier. That's nice too, but the really fun part is when you use the flash to help you to tell your story. You can use crazy harsh flash like me if you want. You can bounce it off mirrors or make it a funky color, or you could even put it in the frame if you want. I got inspired to start doing that by this shot by Sina Nasseri, where he got the talent himself to hold the flash, which I think is really clever. Please do let me know in the comments the ways that you like to use flash, because I'm always interested to hear how people get creative with it. I know what you're about to scroll down and put in the comments section. Scroll back up here. You're saying, wow, I'd really love to go and take some cool flash photos, but such a shame that I live in such a boring place. Guess what? It doesn't matter. Watch this video next and I'll teach you how to take banger photos in boring places. Stay hydrated and create art.